existing products to promote African participation in large-scale infrastructure projects. The focus is on driving the EPC value chain growth through financing, facilitation, and support for various stakeholders, including governments, construction firms, and financial institutions. The initiative also invests in technology platform to improve the access to resources, and you will see that shortly. Through increased income and urbanization, driving significant investment in social and economic infrastructure across the continent. This has led to a surge in engineering and construction E&C projects. However, many emerging markets struggle with limited domestic financing and expertise, highlighting the need for partnership, greater partnership for that matter, and international firms and international collaborations. Strengthening local engineering and construction capabilities is absolutely crucial to capturing a larger share of infrastructure investment. So, if you are in the engineer, procure, construct, and contract space, you are definitely in the right room. Without much ado, I'd like to call on someone to give us the opening remarks, and he's in the passing of Mr. Ayman El-Zobi, Director, Trade, Investment, Corporate Finance, Afreximbank. Shall we welcome him with a round of applause, please? Monsieur Ayman?
Mr. Ayman, please take to the stage.
Can we have a spot video in waiting? Team AV.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
He was found, Mr. Ayman, for you. A round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Amma, very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I was just bringing some people to the workshop who are very important to us to attend and participate. My name is Ayman El-Zobi. I'm the Director for the Intra-African Trade, Investment, and Corporate Finance at the African Export-Import Bank. And I'm very happy and proud to be here with you today, representing the African Export-Import Bank and addressing you on behalf of the bank for this very important initiative. For those of you who do not know who Afreximbank is, we're a multilateral development finance institution that was created in 1994 with the aim of developing intra and extra-African trades. But over the years, the bank's DNA has evolved, and we now have a full commercial platform of banking services ranging from trade finance to project finance, advisory and capital markets, and the rest. But the main strategy of African Export-Import Bank is to promote intra-African trade. That's the #1 strategy of the bank. At the African Export-Import Bank, we believe in what we do. We are very passionate about what we do. We love our continent. That's our main market. And this is where our innovation is coming from. We are very innovative in promoting initiatives and programs and products that solve African problems. When we started this journey around 10 years ago with a strategy of promoting intra-African trade, we thought about all the obstacles and all the problems hindering intra-African trade. And we found a solution for each. And one of the main problems and obstacles, as all you know, is the lack of proper infrastructure, the lack of proper industrialization across the continent. And we see the problem lies in the fact that not so many international institutions are willing to come to Africa and take the risk and do construction and infrastructure projects. And yet, there are so many African companies, indigenous African companies, that have the track record, that have the expertise, that have the means to do a lot of infrastructure work and a lot of projects. But they lack the financing means, and they don't have the market information on Africa. So we worked very tirelessly over the past 10 years to try and bridge the gap of those two main elements, to empower African construction companies by financing means and by market information so that they can do more projects and more construction work across the continent. And over the past 8 or 9 years, we've been able to mobilize infrastructure projects that are done by African construction companies of over 15 billion US dollars. We relied on our core clients of the bank in different regions, in the different intra-African trade hubs, as we call them, to help them with financing and help them with market information and help them with twinning and facilitation services to do a lot of projects in various fields in more than 25 African countries. And as we were doing this and as we were implementing this very important initiative, we found there are so many other problems that we need to tackle, so many other issues that we need to work on and help our African companies to encounter so that more work can be done. And that's why we have developed this very important initiative, which we call Afreximbank Intra-African EPC Engineer, Procure, and Construct Initiative. Under this initiative, we're trying to help African companies to grow their footprint across Africa, to do more construction activities. We provide them with market information, as I said. We provide them with twinning facilitation services, as I said. But more importantly, we try through these workshops and through this program, we try to help them on how to win contracts, how to bid for contracts across Africa, not just know about the bid opportunities, but also how to win contracts, to give them this kind of market knowledge, and also to create partnerships among themselves so that they can do very big projects. One of the very big projects that we are very proud that we have led from A to Z in Africa, which is the Tanzania Refugee Dam. Approximately $4 billion worth of investment that was done solely by African institutions. All of the parties involved in this project were African institutions. The banks were Afreximbank with Egyptian banks and Tanzanian banks. The contractors were African, Swedish and Arab contractors of Egypt. And of course, it's a major collaboration between Egypt and Tanzania. So, and we're trying to replicate this. We've done so many examples like this proudly across the continent. And that's the aim of this workshop. This is the third workshop that we do across the continent. The first one we did was in Egypt last year. We've done one very recently in Lagos, Nigeria, and we're doing the third one here in Morocco. We try to leverage on the opportunity that we are in the Africa Investment Forum and use the opportunity to invite some of the construction companies present and some of the investors present so that we can sensitize them about this very important initiative. It's not another talk show in the conferences. This is a workshop. This is a very targeted event, and that's why we want to educate the attendees about this program, about infrastructure landscape in Africa, about recent dynamics and recent trends in construction across the continent, so that we have an outcome out of this today's event. So we count on your full partnership. We count on you to challenge the attendees, the people who will speak. We also have a number of people who will speak that are experts in this field. So we really rely on you to participate actively so that we can gain a momentum and get a real outcome out of this workshop so that we can change the status quo. There's an infrastructure gap in Africa of over 60 billion US dollars. And it would remain as a gap because we can't find international companies to do the construction work. But if we rely on our own companies, if we empower them with market information, if we empower them with financing, and this is not just talk, these are real examples that we have done on the ground successfully. If we continue to do this, maybe one day we will cover all the infrastructure gap in Africa, and we will have African companies that have grown to become global companies across the globe and have done so many things outside of the continent. I don't want to take much of your time. I welcome you all to this event today. Thank you so much for coming. As I said, I count on your active participation. We are here for you, me and my colleagues. I have my colleague here, Amir, and my colleague Amma, of course. If you have any questions later, if you want to organize any bilateral meetings or any discussions, we'll be happy to take that. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll leave you to the rest of today's forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ayman. Thanks for restating Afreximbank's commitment to the continent's economic development. Not only are we aware of the challenges confronted by the continent, but we also have the right insight. And most importantly, we take action, impactful actions. At this stage, I'd like to, maybe another round of applause to you, Ayman. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge our audience online. We're streaming live on Afreximbank TV via YouTube. We would also take a video next, which is really the basis on which the EPC initiative was taken. It's the research conducted by Afreximbank, and that survey result is going to be presented by Dr. Anthony Coleman, Principal Economics at Afreximbank. It's a pre-recorded video. Enjoy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anthony Coleman from the Research Division of the African Export-Import Bank. I'm very happy to have this conversation with all of us through this medium. I would have loved to be in Rabat physically, but technology gives us an opportunity to be there, even though not physically, and to have this conversation. The conversation before us this afternoon is in relation to the African construction market, and also we'll dovetail that into the findings of a survey that the African Export-Import Bank carried out. The construction sector is a very important sector when it comes to Africa's growth and development prospects. Globally, the sector is expected to boom and to expand significantly. And Africa, although currently is behind Asia, Europe, is expected to play a very important role in attracting a lot of construction activity in the coming years. There's a reason for Africa's projected domination in terms of construction activity in the coming years. One being that there is increased urbanization. The increased urbanization generates alongside high demand for low-cost housing, and that brings construction activities. And then again, there's also the high income associated with a very significant portion of the middle income level of the population. Now, the high income of the citizenry of the people also brings alongside the demand for activities like leisure and so forth and so on. And that also means that there's a need to construct structures that address this kind of demand. Before I proceed, let me indicate that I'm going to speak through my presentation without necessarily pushing the slide. The reason being that I think the slides, the presentation is there with my colleagues and will be shared with all of you. So I'll speak through it, and then you will have the full presentation to be able to peruse it yourself at your free time. So the construction sector in Africa is expected to grow significantly in the coming decade. Right now, the sector is estimated at around 175 billion United States dollars, and is expected to grow by 9% at the end of the year. As a matter of fact, in about 10 years' time, the sector is expected to double. The value is expected to double in over almost $400 billion United States dollars. But the biggest concern, irrespective of the prospect of the sector, to an institution like the African Export-Import Bank, is the apparent low participation of African contractors in the construction sector. African contractors like yourself are seen to be playing very minimal role in executing construction projects across the length and breadth of our continent. And for us, as an African-oriented organization, we believe in the participation or in the creation of local content. It is important that as the sector booms, the value that accrues to African contractors also grows. It is in this context that we'll be able to then channel the resources and the gains into other activities with a view to accelerating the growth and the development of our dear continent. And so, to be able to understand exactly the story behind the low participation of African contractors in the sector, the bank carried out a survey. The survey was carried out in the construction sector, interviewing contractors, and then also interviewing government agencies that award contracts to winners and bidders of projects that need to be executed. We interviewed contractors who had drawn across various countries in the continent. In the same way, we interviewed agencies or government agencies from various countries across the continent. Among other findings, the contractors highlighted 3 key findings as the reasons for their lack of participation in the construction sector in the continent. And I'll speak to them briefly. The first reason or the first issue they highlighted is the lack of capacity. They indicated their lack of capacity in two dimensions. The technical capacity to execute contracts, and then also capacity to sometimes understand even the bidding and the procurement processes to be able to even go through and win a bid. Now, the capacity in terms of technical to execute projects for us was very important, to an extent that we understood that if we are able to address that capacity constraint, then African contractors like yourself will be able to participate actively in the construction sector in the continent. It is also important that understanding the bidding processes and what needs to be done to be able to submit a bid and to win a bid came also as an important element that as a bank we felt if we're able to address it, then you are in a position to be able to support your application for bids and potentially win them and execute. The second reason they highlighted as explaining their lack of participation is also not having the requisite financial muscle. They indicated that some of the projects come with very heavy financial requirements, and not being able to have that also prevented them to be able to participate in this sector. The next thing they highlighted, or the next constraint they highlighted, is that sometimes they do not even know the existence of certain projects in order to bid. And that to us was shocking. So surprising because we felt that contractors like yourself who have been dealing with government over the years would at any point in time be in a position to know what project exists that I can bid and what projects do not exist. So coming out from the survey for us was an eye-opener. The fact that some contractors sometimes do not know the projects available to even be able to bid for them. So these were the three that came out from the contractors, just explaining why they have low participation in the construction business in the continent. We then spoke to government agencies that award contracts. And among other findings, one of the reasons they gave for sometimes lack of participation of African contractors is that they, in some cases, do not know the existence of contractors with the capacity to execute certain projects. And that also was a shocking revelation, because the government, we felt, across our countries, we felt have been dealing with local contractors, and therefore felt at any point in time, they should be able to know which contractors exist and who can execute what. But they said, in some cases, they do not know which contractors exist and what they can do. Now, it is these revelations that then led the bank to introduce this important initiative. This initiative we call the EPC initiative is designed to, first and foremost, address the reasons for the low participation of African contractors in Africa, in the African construction sector. That is one. And then also to ensure that the construction sector is dominated or has a significant player mix from the continent, with a view to boosting and accelerating the continent's drive towards growth and development. My colleagues who are on the ground would actually speak extensively to the APC and to what the bank is doing to be able to address the knowledge gap and the knowledge and the finance gaps in order to be able to capacitate African contractors like yourself to be able to participate actively and fully in the construction business across the continent. We have a lot of construction activities that are ongoing in East Africa, and a lot of them are coming up as well. We have West Africa, a lot of construction activities in Nigeria and other countries. In Southern Africa, we have similar story. In North Africa, we have similar story, and in even Central Africa, we still have a lot of construction activities that are coming up. And so it is our hope that we'll be able to capacitate contractors like yourself to be able to take advantage of emerging opportunities in the sector, to win bids and execute them, so that together we can build prosperous continent into the Africa that we want. So thank you so much for your attention, and I wish you all a pleasant afternoon and then pleasant sessions after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. So this is a presentation of the survey results. The document is placed on your seats. There are also soft copies at the Afreximbank booth at the marketplace. And if you would like to interact more with my colleagues on ground, Mr. Amir Bodilawson, Monsieur Amir, might you identify yourself? Feel free to engage, to connect with us. The highlights of the reports are available, and this really forms the basis on which Afreximbank took the initiative to develop and deploy the EPC as a platform. Next, it's really to know what this platform is all about. I think we've done the scene setting, the problem statement. We've explained why we took the initiative, the basis on which we took it, what exactly is this initiative, and how might that help you if you are in the EPC space. We'll take another video cue. This is the benefit of technology. Please don't shoot me. This is a demo of the EPC platform. It's going to give you a cursory view of how everything works. And of course, as I said, we're available to provide you with, furnish you with more details. EPC demo, please. Thank you. While the demo video is queued, indeed, it's going to be interactive. There's the opportunity for interactivity, questions and answers. There's also scheduled a panel discussion, really, that's going to discuss from an experiential perspective for people, for clients who are actually using the EPC to be able to share their experience, to pick the learnings and see how that could possibly help your business if you are in the space. So I urge you to kindly note your questions. There will be room for answers and my colleagues will be able to address those questions. If the EPC video is ready. Thank you.
Introducing the EPC Tenders Platform, part of the Africa Trade Gateway suite of services. The Afreximbank's Africa Trade Gateway is a pioneering digital ecosystem conceived by the African Export-Import Bank and it's supported by Afreximbank and the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, designed to facilitate and amplify trade, commerce, payments, and investment across the continent. The EPC Tenders Platform is created to connect African contractors to large African and Caribbean tender and contract projects. The EPC Tenders Platform promotes accessibility to vital information for African contractors, ensuring access to projects, big or small. With a user-friendly interface, contractors can now find projects tailored to their expertise. The Virtual African Intra-African EPC Contractors Forum encourages collaboration over competition. Here, ideas merge, partnerships form, and innovation thrives. And for African governments, sourcing EPC contractors has never been easier. One platform, endless possibilities. Together, we can redefine the future of African construction, leveraging technology to bring dreams to life. Building Africa by Africans, boosting the participation of African contractors in large African and Caribbean infrastructure projects. Join us in this revolution. Register on our platform today to get access to all our solutions and be part of the change.
Round of applause, please. Mesdames et messieurs, I present to you the EPC platform. So as the saying goes, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. So let's get into the conversation. Let's actually dissect what this whole platform, what this whole solution initiative is about. I would like to call on, so of course we're going to have the conversation, the panel discussion. I'd like to call on Mr. Amir Body-Lawson, who is going to moderate the session on the theme, challenges, opportunities, and solutions for African EPC, perspectives of the EPC. Amir, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Like Emma said, we're just going to have a short fire chat, quite informal, to dissect in exactly what the EPC construct and contract financing initiative is all about. I would just like to call on stage the panelists we're going to have today. Ladies first. So I'll start with Mrs. Mona Laziz. She's Senior Investment Associate, Africa 50 Project Development. Ms. Mona is an infrastructure development professional with over 14 years of experience in the transport, and energy projects. She holds a hybrid academic background in mathematics, IT, and business. She began her career in Vinci Concessions, working on greenfield and brownfield airport and transport projects in emerging markets. Welcome, Madam. Next, I would like to call on Mr. Anis Jaziri, President of the Tunisia Africa Business Council. The Tunisia Africa Business Council is an enterprise that's meant to support Tunisian companies in the expansion into African markets. Thank you. So, just to dive in straight into the whole matter, you've seen the industry survey that was the basis of the whole initiative we're talking about today. Post that, we developed the initiative, which we've been deploying and implementing across Africa. And we finally decided to go digital with what COVID taught us all, and we launched the platform, which today we're happy to say we have over about 180 to 200 different EPCs in Africa. Just to highlight what the initiative has done so far, we've been able to support EPCs in Africa in the tune of about $7 billion in financing. And the aim is to continue doing that and promoting our own African EPCs to become the intra-African champions they need to be able to compete in a level playing field with all other EPCs globally. So I'll start with Mrs. Mona. With the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, gaining momentum, what opportunities do you foresee in the cross-border collaborations between African EPCs, and how can regional integration enhance the competitive edge of local contractors?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Amir, for this question. So at Africa 50, we invest, as you know, in infrastructure assets, both greenfield and brownfield. But what we put into the heart of our decision, the investment decision, is really the regional integration as materialized by the FCFTA initiative. What we actually, it's more than the regional integration per se that we try to meet in our decisions to invest in this or that assets. It's mostly the fact that it basically encourages and it generates a positive impact, both economic and social impact locally. And the fact that we have the opportunity in those projects to engage local and African and regional EPC contractor, we see it as a great means to achieve that impact, that economic and social impact through job creation and capability building that goes with it. And FCFTA actually is a great opportunity to create a sustainable and competitive ecosystem for EPC contractor. And as a matter of fact, when we invest in cross-border deals at Africa 15, cross-border projects such as the joint border posts in the region or toll roads that are located in the Abidjan-Lagos corridor, for instance, and I think Alain, our CEO Alain, mentioned as well some of those instances. We see how what are the opportunities for EPC contractors to bid to projects and gain in track record and in experience and be able to scale up, their activity. Now that goes with challenges, and I think this is the crux of the discussion, right? It goes with challenges, and we see those challenges in our day-to-day business. First one, from my experience and as far as Africa 50 is concerned, is really, and I think Mr. Azorbi mentioned it, is the ability to structure a proposal and to submit a well-structured bid. This is a major challenge, and I think a quick win for African EPC contractor, because at Africa 50, we invest as a concessionaire, and most of the time, as part of the concession agreement, we have to build the asset, and then we tender out the construction to EPC contractor, and we don't limit the tender to a geography, right? So African EPC contractor can submit, and we are encouraged to submit because we encourage also the local content in our documentation. But the challenge we're faced with, and it's almost systematically, is the fact that we receive proposals that most of the time either miss a section or miss a part that has a great score and unfortunately lead to a unsuccessful bid for our African EPC contractor. So this is the first one that I see. The second one is I would say the lack of harmonization in standards between the countries within the FCFTA, outreach. So, and the EPCs as well face problems, I guess, in meeting standards that they are not familiar with, simply because they are those of other countries. But we see, and I mean, it's easy to say, I know, but we see there are like ways to bypass that challenge, such as creating alliances, creating CJVs, as we see in other, geographies. I was actually working in Latin American projects where it's quite easy and it's quite common to create CJVs with multiple EPC contractors to address either different expertises, areas of expertise, or different standards, because we're working on cross-border projects when we talk about FCFTA, right? And so, yeah, these are the major, I guess, areas of attention for the African EPC contractors. There are, of course, the capability buildings, etc., but this is also something that could be addressed with some efforts, both on the government side, but as well on the EPC side, that perhaps there is some need for to invest in technical skill building. But I guess these are areas of improvement that we see and challenges for us when we tender the construction out and we're lacking bids from, or at least tangible and well-structured bids locally. And I'll pause here and happy to get any questions.
Thank you very much, Mona. Like you mentioned, the lack of expertise, the lack of standardization, and these are all the parameters in which, following the survey, the initiative is out to support. Partnership is key in it. We support joint border post projects. We're working on several of them in the whole of Western Central Africa, as well as East Africa. And, collaboration is what the AIF all about, and I think we're going to support that. Donc, Monsieur Anis.
Mr. Anis.
Les entreprises EPC africaines font souvent face à une
EPC
concurrence
companies in Africa
acharnée de la
very
part
often have to
de
deal with
firmes internationales
significant
des ressources financières et des
competition
technologies
from
avancées, plus avancées que nous avons aujourd'hui.
companies from
Selon votre
abroad
perspective,
with other
quels sont
technology
les
and
principaux
expertise.
défis de
According to you, what
capacité
are the main
auxquels font
challenges
face
in terms of
les EPC
capacity
africaines
that
dans la
African
compétition pour des
EPCs
grands
have to
projets
deal with when
d'infrastructure
competing
et comment peuvent-ils
for large
surmonter?
projects, and how can they overcome these challenges?
Merci, Emir.
Thank you very much,
En fait,
Emir.
je vais vous en parler un petit peu de
I'm
l'expérience
going to just tell you a bit
tunisienne
about
et
the
aussi,
Tunisian
égyptienne.
experience,
En
also
fait,
the
je
Egyptian
représente Tunisia
experience.
Africa Business Council. C'est
I
une
represent the
organisation
Tunisia
leader dans
Africa
l'activité
Business
accompagne les
Council.
opérateurs
We're a
économiques
leading association
tunisiens
that
en Afrique,
assists
y compris ceux
companies,
qui sont dans le domaine
Tunisian
du
companies
engineering, procurement and construction.
operating in Africa,
Nous avons
also in the EPC
les 10
field.
dernières années quand même
In the past
sillonné l'Afrique à
10
travers
years,
40 missions, Afrique de
we've
l'Ouest,
had
Afrique centrale,
40
Afrique
missions across
de
Africa,
l'Est, et nous
West,
avons
Central,
constaté sur
East
le
Africa,
terrain
and what we
la
saw
grande
on the ground
complexité et
is
les
that
défis majeurs pour
there
avoir
are
des marchés dans le
significant
domaine
challenges. There's great complexity in
EPC.
accessing EPC
Et au niveau
markets.
de compétition internationale,
And in
bien
terms
sûr, nous
of
sommes
international
confrontés, nous, Africains,
competition,
à surtout les Chinois, qui sont
Africans have to deal with the Chinese in particular, who are very strong when it comes to infrastructure projects. They're everywhere. We look, everywhere we look in Africa, we'll find the Chinese, but also the Europeans, Italians, French, Germany was also here, British, and the United States are here too. Turkey, too, is a player in the infrastructure field where it has a lot of projects in Africa. So given this international competition, we have managed nonetheless to make sure that Tunisian companies in the field of engineering, we have Studi, that's well known in Africa, and others that do excellent work in the engineering field in Africa. We've helped them prevail in Africa in terms of construction there too, but it's involved really hard work. It's not always easy. I mean, there's been very high-level lobbying. In Côte d'Ivoire, for example, the highway, 150 kilometers, $70 million, the SBF in Niger, among others, in Benin as well. There are other examples of projects we've helped with, but we realized it wasn't enough. In the past few years, competition has become more difficult, and we can't always enter the field of the more structuring, almost structurally important projects. They're Turkish, European companies, etc., all competing, and they're here with the very complex solutions that they bring, in particular when it comes to financing, what is difficult in Africa. It's a significant challenge for us. So what we proposed, and this was also done in Egypt, is that we organize ourselves into groups. We can't go it alone when it comes to this difficult international competition. So we launched the TUCAN initiative, the Tunisian Consortium for African Development, and this is like IGAD in Egypt. But IGAD brings together Arab constructors, a number of different constructors, and in Tunisia we brought together a number of different players in this field as well, in the water field and telecoms field. So it's a consortium which makes it possible for us to take on construction projects of some size, and that are complex, and we're able to play in a larger field. So we have, say, for example, 3 companies that have agreed to work together, and we can go further in that manner. The objective of TUCAD is to find and help leverage funding. So this is a battle. But we are beginning to see the fruits of this hard work in IGAD in Egypt. If you write EGAD, IGAD, you will see that last week they were in Gabon. They met with the Gabonese president and they signed important contracts. I was in Libreville 2 weeks ago myself with a large delegation, and I was able to sign a contract for the consortium of a road of 300 kilometers, and there's a pilot project for social housing, 600 units. So there are challenges when it comes to international competition for African companies, and the solution is we need to group together, we need to work together. And in discussing with my friend Ayman, earlier we talked about Gabon, we talked about the funding, and he said, well, IGAD in Gabon is already present, and so why not work together to fund? I hope we're going to be able to fund those projects together, God willing. So these are some of the things we're doing, and these are structurally important projects also in the technology field. So certain African countries need technology that comes from Asia, from Europe, from America, and there too we're creating triangulations of groups that will allow us to work together in partnership. We also signed with the leader organization in Germany a contract that will help us work on certain very important structural projects where we lack the technical know-how alone to work in a particular field. So, Emile, I hope that I've covered some of the questions, if not all.
En effectif, c'est le moyen le plus facile d'avancer en Afrique. Je pense qu'avant qu'on clôture ce panel,
Thank you. Before we conclude, I'd like to check whether there are any questions or comments
we'll just open it up to the audience if there are any questions specific
from the floor.
To ask our panelists or myself. I know we'll be going through quite a few presentations, so we can help and clarify that as we wrapping up. On peut avoir des micros, s'il te plaît?
Could you please get that the participant
microphones, please, if we can. Thank you.
Microphone, please.
Addressing your question too.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is a very complex subject, and I'd like to raise a couple of issues here. One of the most important is the local availability of engineering firms, design firms, consulting firms who will supervise EPC contractors. And what we find in our country, Zimbabwe, is we've lost a lot of skills. And we find it necessary, we would like to employ local engineering firms, professional companies to supervise EPC contractors. This is a very important function, critical function, especially if you're going to use local firms for EPC activities. The second issue is a financial one. We found in Zimbabwe where the state issues contracts for major EPC projects, that in fact they haven't got the resources to fund the project properly. And so contractors and engineering companies that are supervising the contractors are not paid properly. And this increases the cost of the project very substantially. And I would challenge the financial institutions that are here to see to it that projects, major infrastructure projects, which are entered into on the African continent, are in fact funded properly from the beginning, that adequate funds are made available to finish the projects on time and within budget. I think this is a critical discipline, which I've basically observed is not always there. On the issue of creating capacity, contracting capacity, my government has recently entered into a major construction program for national roads. And they've done this by creating 5 contracting companies, which they have contracted on an EPC basis to undertake this work. It's been very successful in terms of creating domestic capacity for the major works that are involved. And we now have at least 4 of the 5 companies that they started who are capable of fulfilling the obligations that they contracted for in a professional manner and to a required standard. But it has resulted in considerable difficulties in the sense that the state did not employ a professional firm to supervise these individuals. So they've been cutting costs and they've been overcharging, and the result has been a very expensive contract. And I think that we must recognize that this particular subject requires a holistic approach. You've got to solve all the problems involved. And, and I think that if we did that, I think we could successfully develop substantial capacity within Africa to undertake these major projects. Last question I have is for Afreximbank. Why did you employ an Indian company to build your headquarters in Harare?
Okay, so that's a good one. Do we start? Sorry. Yes. So maybe we start the first. It was quite a long question, but I picked the point around capacity building, holistic approach to EPC, and of course the financing. And I dare touch on the supervision, thereby the ethics with which these contracts are being executed. Amir?
I'll give it a shot. I think it kind of goes through all the complete EPC value chain that the initiative is trying to drive, in the sense that through the survey, all these elements were identified. We got feedback from sovereigns, from the private, and more, we're trying to create this ecosystem. Reason why we spoke about the EPC platform. It's an ecosystem where we want both the supervising companies, the financial institutions, the EPC contractors themselves to all come and register, such that it gives them a platform to start engaging each other. And that is our aim, is as much as we are standing on the side and saying, we've given you this platform, we are there to support. Capacity building is something we're also deploying in the operational plan that we'll be deploying next year. That is a key element where we want to start engaging the sovereigns to educate them on how to actually capacitize the EPC contractors. But at the same time, we are saying, we know there are expert companies that can provide project supervision elsewhere in Africa. Because we see it from, I would say, the whole continent, we know how to mobilize them to different countries. We're not isolated just only to one country. I'll give a good example. Northern Africa has enjoyed a lot of this EPC initiative because we've been able to identify opportunities for them to deploy in West Africa, even in East Africa as well, and they come along with a full suite. We've got supervision, we've got financing, we've got follow-ups after that, and they integrate with the local institutions that these countries may have, because most sovereigns, as you know, have their own departments that do the project evaluation and validation. But we insist in our financing because we have this developmental impact angle to ensure that any project we are financing goes to completion and it's done in the way it was designed to do. So that's what we do. So it's not just dishing out the money, but ensuring that we follow through, it's done, and we see what was actually identified at the start of the project as the impact, the developmental impact to the country. That is how we work. And I think by partnering our other partners and deploying this, we will see and achieve what we aim, which is, elevating Africa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I?
Yes, Mona, you'd like to add something to it?
Is this working? Yes. So can I add to what you said, Amir, which I find really relevant? And I like the Zimbabwean example, and thank you, sir, for bringing up that one, because I know very well your country. I actually took the Harare-Beit Bridge road recently and went to several airports across the country. And actually, I congratulate you and your country for the work done on refurbishing those assets and successfully carrying out the rehabilitation of the airports, for instance, of that stretch of toll road, etc. And you've done like a fantastic job. Now, the also challenge that goes with that model of carrying out public works, and this is applicable to other countries, is that sometimes we think that our countries tend to do the works, but perhaps there's also, and it is the reality of our continent, to a bit put less effort into finding the right supervision, the right body supervising the works, although in Zimbabwe, I think it's not the case, but in other countries, it's the case, or the maintenance that comes afterwards is most of the time less focused on, I would say. So this is one point that I think is a bit of an issue in this model of countries keeping on doing the works on themselves or on their balance sheet and on their own, means. The other issue also I find is that the financing part of it also is a challenge is a bit underestimated most of the time. So, and I see that as a, a struggle for the EPC contractor that don't get paid on time, most of the time, and that leads to bankruptcy of some of the emerging EPC contractors on the continent. And this doesn't help, obviously, the building of an ecosystem of local EPC contractors. But also from the government's perspective, with more and more constrained, but I mean, balance sheets, if I may speak this way, or constrained, budgets, etc. This is not a sustainable mode. That is why, obviously, and I'll plead for my house, we plead for the PPP model because it addresses all of those issues at once in the same contract. The governments pass on the burden of supervising the works, carrying the works, and the financing of it to a third private party. And at Africa 50, this is where we play a role where we can in really investing in concession agreements, because we think not only, I mean, it's not just for the economic profitability, or so it's always also for the value that it brings to the governments in managing the EPC contractors properly, structuring, the agreements with the EPC contractor, structuring the scope of work of those players. And I think it's a win-win situation for the governments, for the EPC contractors that then find themselves navigating in a properly structured tenders, and then for the concessionaire, because obviously they get the project rights. But I mean, this is a start of a solution to probably most of the points you rightfully mentioned. There are other ways, and of course, we will keep in this workshop pushing the reflection as to how to address those challenges outside the PPP framework, because there's also other, Mr. Azarbi also mentioned the infrastructure gap in the continent, which I think is even much higher than 60 billion. Some sources mention something like 100 billion to be addressed. So I think there are plenty of room for other modes, and certainly a role for the EPC contractors to play. But I believe in the EPP mode in addressing many of those issues. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mona. That's so insightful. It's clear that addressing the EPC challenge is a process, and it cannot be addressed by just one institution. It's really through collaboration and partnership to be able to structure and address this from a more holistic perspective. I think we still have a challenge to address as Afreximbank. So I'll call on Mr. El Zogbi to speak to the challenge that was just thrown to us, also on the EPC journey. Thank you. Microphone, please.
Just to make a quick comment, thank you so much for bringing this Zimbabwe branch and Indian company example, because this is exactly why we're having this initiative, is to create African companies, because our agenda is not to push African companies, to push African capable companies to do contracts. And we, as a responsible multilateral, we encourage competitiveness. So we have to go through a competitive bid. We want a company that has won the contract competitively on arm's length basis. So that's why when we say that we want African companies to do infrastructure in Africa, it doesn't mean that we'll not work with the rest of the world. The challenges are too many, as Mona said, and we will continue to work with all international companies. But let me assure you, sir, still, however, if our branch in Zimbabwe is being built by an Indian company, our headquarters is in Cairo, Egypt, which is 10 times the size of the Zimbabwe branch, and is being done by an Egyptian construction company who won the bid successfully in competition with another Chinese company. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Amen. On that note, let's keep building capabilities of our EPCs. Let's support them with capacity, financing, and all the works. And I'd like to thank our moderator. Oh, we have another question, please. Let's take, how many more? 3 more? 2 more, please. My apologies.
My name is Chimi Webele. I'm the Business Development Director for a company called MP Infrastructure. We originated from Nigeria, but we operate across Africa, Ghana, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire. We've operated in Zambia and Rwanda. Our journey has been quite interesting because we primarily started in telecoms during the boom period and then moved into power, water infrastructure, roads, real estate, and a lot of technology. So we play as a full spectrum infrastructure company. My question primarily is that I don't think our challenge is technical capacity. Africa has produced some of the best engineers in the world. A lot of us have been trained at the best universities, come back home, and I'm implementing great projects. For my case, I just finished implementing the first smart city in southeastern Nigeria. It's a 100-hectare development with fiber to the home, roads, 20 kilometers of roads, water, access control, the best access control systems in the world from Gallagher. And so I know we have the technical capacity to deliver. It's not an issue, it's given. The biggest challenge we have, especially in Africa, in delivery, is financial. So a lot of the international tenders, whether it's the United Nations, whether it's FDB, whether it's World Bank, whether it's the EU, name it, even when you pass the technical, when it comes to the financial, is what is the cost of funding? If I win a contract now with the UN, I go in there, then I have to go to a Nigerian bank, they're charging me over 30% interest rate for the funding, because most of the international companies do not mobilize you. They expect you to have your own funds, and funds don't sit idly waiting for contracts to be won. So when you win a contract, you have to go to the bank. The bank will start giving you all kinds of conditionalities, and even when you meet those conditionalities, they're charging you over 30-35% interest rate to fund the project, and the payments don't always come in at the right time. So you end up working for the bank. And so for my situation, I would expect something like Afreximbank to support African EPC contractors, especially with affordable funding, so they can compete. That's why the Chinese, the Indian companies tend to win most of the works in Africa, because they have funding from their countries and from their own local banks. But we don't have that. We don't have that luxury. And that puts us at a very disadvantaged position. So I would like to know specifically what Afrexim and AFDB and all the African banks are going to do to support EPC contractors in Africa, to ensure that they can compete, ensure that they have the financial muscle to deliver projects without going bankrupt or end up working for a local bank. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that's why we're here. With this initiative, we've been able to put in place tailored financial solutions to accompany EPC contractors. We have our global facility that we've been able to deploy, and the idea of this global facility is to provide you the various contracting bonds that you need, from bid bonds to performance bonds to advance payment guarantees to retention bonds, as well as providing working capital. What we also try to do is we like to be there at the start. So when you're going for your bid, you're going with an EPC plus F solution. And the idea of the costs is manageable if we come in at the beginning, not at the tail end. Because when we come in at the tail end, it's a bit challenging. We do not structure it the way best we deem fit. That will provide you the capacity to do your job and also do ours. You are an EPC contractor, do your job, construct, deliver from a technical expertise. We will take out the financing. And I think Afrexim, like I mentioned, we've been able to deploy facilities in the tune of about 7 billion, and we will continue doing that at very, very competitive rates. Thank you.
Next question, sir.
Okay, my name is Caleb Dengu. I'm coming from Zimbabwe, from Green Hybrid Power. What just confuses me with a lot of EPC contractors is most of them don't have the project management software. If you ask for a bid, sometimes what they're quoting is completely outside the standard. If you expect a megawatt to cost about $1 million from a spectrum, just a mean average of different contractors, they can come up with a quotation of either 250,000, very small, which is impossible to complete, or sometimes come with a $2 million a megawatt, which is just way outside. And when you look at them, they've not applied. Somebody was talking about Chinese. Chinese, you give them the parameters, they put it on a software, they are able to clearly give section by section that material will be so much. The standard costs are properly done, following FEDIC or whatever standard they're using. What can we do to get our EPC contractors to start using technology? Because really sometimes it's almost shameful and embarrassing. You would almost think even if you want to be corrupt, you can't come 10 times the price.
Absolutely.
So maybe really just to digitize and standardize, probably before you even sort of upload them on the platform, to actually just teach them, because yes, some of them are very good engineers and the like, but it's also a different skill to be able to prepare from the proposal and the procurement, especially the procurement part. It has really been abused so much that people don't have confidence unless we actually address that problem.
Absolutely. Leveraging technology. Monsieur Anis?
Désolé, je vais intervenir en français.
I will be speaking in French. Yes.
Il a raison et je vais revenir.
I think this is right. And there was another question related to financing, which I will be speaking to later. And we have major difficulties to get funds, and also a question of timeline. Sometimes 1 year, 2 years for this type of projects, while the project is governed by a given timeline and deadlines. We need really to encourage this EPC initiative. But talking about funding agencies, it is important to accelerate the provision of those funds on EPC. Thank you.
Maybe just to also just add briefly, I fully agree with the need for capacity building, which is something we are working strong at. But also one thing that we do with our initiative is the tuning element of it. You see, an EPC may be localized in Zimbabwe, may require the expertise of one that is out of, I don't know, Egypt. And by us taking the Egyptian company to partner the local Zimbabwean company to deliver the project, they breach that issue of not having the right technical expertise. And what always happens is, mostly because of domestic requirements, you will see them, creating a JV like Mona mentioned, to actually now bid for this project and deliver an holistic approach. That's what we also do with this initiative. The EPC platform, like I mentioned, is a stakeholder management platform. And on there, you have a variety of experts with different capacities. So this is what this initiative drives. Looking across Africa, picking out the best in Africa, growing them up to become inter-champions, and taking them across the whole of Africa to bid competitively with the Chinese. Yes, we may need to invest in more software. That's part of financing. The money is there that will come from any of the financial institutions in Africa, including ourselves, to support that, provided they know the tail end of where the money is going to and what it's going to achieve in the tail end. I think I'll add that to complement it, that's how we're going to grow our EPCs in Africa. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Just here.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Hannes. Please proceed.
Juste, j'ajoute par rapport effectivement à
just to add to the response on capacity building. And also, I will speak about this EPC initiative. In order to build the capacity of Tunisian, of African contracting agencies, we need really to deploy technology. Most African contracting companies work in a traditional manner, we have major structuring projects, and as our friend from Nigeria said, these are very complex projects. So you will have to manage also many subcontractors. So technologically speaking, the Chinese, the Americans, the Europeans are more equipped, better equipped than us, and they can work for short, timelines. I think Afreximbank is doing a lot in this regard. Thank you. You're right. Thank you.
Any other question? I think the takeout for me from the last session by Mr. Anis is absolutely clear. We are on the right path. There's more to do. We cannot do it alone. Join us. Let's do it together. There's definitely need to build capabilities, build capacity, train, and also apply technology. On that very insightful note, I'd like to thank our moderator, Amir Bodilawson, Manager, Intra-Africa Trade Bank, Madam Mona from Africa 50, Mr. Anis from Tunisia, Africa Business Council. Join me welcoming them and thanking them for this absolutely very insightful and interactive panel discussion. Thank you, gentlemen and lady. Thank you very much. There's been quite a number of inquiries on the survey report. Please, if you didn't find a copy in the room, kindly visit us at the marketplace at the Afreximbank booth. You could find a hard copy as well as a soft copy. Alternatively, do contact me, myself, Amma, or my colleague, Amir, for further discussion or queries on the EPC. To our online audience, we did not forget you. For the sake of time, we couldn't take your question. Please connect with us, reach out to us on all platforms, Afreximbank, for any inquiry or question that you may have on the EPC. On this very insightful and inspirational note, I'd like to invite you all to visit us at the marketplace, Afreximbank booth. Come know more about what we do beyond EPC, as well as know more about EPC. Most importantly, I invite you all to the Intra-African Trade Fair, the next Intra-African Trade Fair 2025, to be held on the 4th, from the 4th to the 10th of September next year. So we extend an early invitation. So this is like your celebrity save the date invite. It's a privilege for us to have you join us in Algiers, Algeria, from the 4th to the 10th of September 2025 to the Intra-African Trade Fair 2025. The last 3 editions have brought together more than 70,000 visitors, 4,500 exhibitors, and generated more than 100 billion in trade and investment deals, indicating the immense potential for intra-African trade. The next edition in 2025, as I said, will take place in Algiers, Algeria, from the 4th to 10th September 2025. And over 2,000 exhibitors are expected, with over 35,000 visitors from more than 140 countries are expected to attend. This is the opportunity for you. Join us. If you would like to know more about the Intra-African Trade Fair, my colleague Janice Costa is here with us. Janice, may we see you? Show of hand, there she is. Please contact Janice if you'd like to know how you can sponsor, how you can be an exhibitor, or how you can just be a delegate to come and know more. On that closing note, I invite our chair, Mr. El-Zobi, to give the closing remarks and invite upstage panelists and moderator, of course, to a group photograph. And that will be all for today. Thank you very much for your attention. Amen.
Thank you so much, Amma. She's great, right? She's been really managing it quite well. So natural and smooth. Thank you so much, Amma. Thank you. And thank you so much, our dear panelists, for this very strong fire chat. I won't do another speech. I'm not very fond of speeches anyway, but just to thank you again and again for your attendance, for your participation. As one of the audience rightly said, this is a very complex matter that requires all hands on deck so that we can change the status quo. It will not be done unless everybody that is involved, all stakeholders, partner together. And from that, I would like to tell you that from this point, we will be having discussions on the sidelines on how we can partner, working with TABC and working with Africa 50, so they can do more in that space. A number of challenges have been identified clearly, and also a number of solutions can be done. We promise you that we work on all those challenges and embed them and amend our program so that we can cater for many of them. For example, we can include a training program on how African construction companies can use software platforms to be able to bid better for contracts. Another training that we can work with Africa 50 on training construction companies on how to submit a bid, both technical and financial. Also one of the opportunities that we will be working on, encouraging more alliances to overcome the challenge of lack of harmonization, as Mona rightly said, forming GVs and more alliances between African construction companies from different regions can be the real solution, and we're really working on that, and we can really push that, working with institutions like TABC, and here comes the role of business associations. So we'll be working more with many of them. Financial resources, cost of fund, and so many things have been discussed, and we will be providing solutions and the right platform for these things. But let me not close before doing a bit of promotion. If you allow me, I would like to use the opportunity. Please publicize and promote for our EPC platform with your respective governments, with your companies, so that we can have more registration on that platform and more interaction to bring opportunities together. Amma has spoken about our Intra-African Trade Fair. We encourage each and every one of you to take a look at it. It's a very interesting and important platform. Please join us for this very big event next year in Algeria. Thank you so much once again, and we hope to see you again. Thank you so much.
You still with us, Ayman, Miss Mona, Mr. Anis, Amir, please join us for a group photo. Anis, he's business developing. Photo, please, monsieur. Un petit moment, s'il vous plaît. I'd also invite my colleagues from Afreximbank to join in the next round. So let's take the first round first. The middle, wonderful. There's no true middle. Great. Thank you. Team Afreximbank, join us upstage. Thank you.